Welcome to Yesterday's Airlines, and in this video I'm going to take a closer look at a very recent NG models release, and that is the Court Line Lockheed Tristar 1 G-BAAB. Now, it's no secret that I'm a massive fan of the NG models Tristars, and in this review I can show you around why that is. Court Line is an especially interesting Tristar operator, partly because it was so early and partly because they're so colourful. Okay, anyway, so let's get into the review. The format for the review, as always, is a maximum score of 30, with 10 going for the mould, 10 going for the replication of the livery, and 10 going towards quality control and printing. So let's move on into the review. Okay, so there's no doubting, first off, that the NG Models Tristar is far and away the best one available. It is one of the best molds in 400 scale. There have been quite a few contenders in the Tristar area, but until very recently, there hadn't been any new molds. You can see in the background I have 4 alternative molds, 4 of the older versions, and we'll take a quick look around and show you why these ones are inferior to this wonderful new NG models version. So starting with the NG version, you can see that it has beautifully replicated the nose and cockpit region of the Tristar, something which none of the other manufacturers have ever successfully got right. It also has beautiful NG style landing gear, really nicely detailed, but more importantly in the right location, unlike on the Loch Ness models Tristar, and the right height, which has also been an issue of recently. Also, it has really finely crafted wings, as you'd expect, and a beautiful tail region. Now, obviously, the tail is the area which is probably the most difficult to replicate in the Tristar molds that are around, but the NG version has a really nicely curved and crafted tail region. It's not too thick, it's a beautiful one piece, and it's got a lovely tight exhaust area here. Really perfect. Good. Now, there has been a few criticisms of past releases because the front of the engines here should cant backwards, and in fact they've just fixed that, and in this version it's really hard to see on the camera, but there is a slight rearward cant here, and that is really good. So one of the best things about NG is that they go through, they modify the molds as they are being produced, and they change over the lifetime of the production runs, which is really great. So this Tristar, which was almost perfect back when they first started releasing models on it, is now effectively perfect. Something which is also excellent and unique for this pair of Court releases initially, hopefully we'll see it on some more, is that they show the very earliest form of the RB211 engine exhaust. You can see that both on under the wing and in the tail here, that you've got these 2 kind of veins coming out, and that's because the very earliest version of this engine had 2 types of thrust reverser. It had the vane reverser where this engine panel moves forward, but it also had clamshell reversers on the exhaust here, which is something which wasn't successful and wasn't very reliable and was removed. But nobody else has ever gone to the trouble to have multiple different exhaust types on a 400 scale Tristar. That's a really impressive thing to do, and this is just a spectacular model from looking at the mold. So why is this better than other Tristars? Well, let's have a quick whip around of some of the other contenders, most of which have never been used very much. First, we've got the Dragon's mold, which is actually probably possibly the next best, actually, even though it's very old. The nose isn't quite as good. It's a little bit pointy. Obviously, the undercarriage is kind of Dragon style simple, but it's got a really nice tail region, though albeit not as nice as you're getting with the NG version. Moving on, we've got the Gemini Jets original Tristar, which is a very old mould and still quite a nice one. It's actually got quite a nice nose region, though it's a little bit stumpy. Simple landing gear. It's got 2 seams, one around the wing, one in these early Geminis around the horizontal stabs. Overall, it's a nice Tristar, and most people's Tristar collection probably would have been based largely around this mould until recently. I can't bring myself even to get rid of some of these old ones, which is why I've still got this Delta, even though I've got the NG replacement. But, you know, it is definitely inferior. Now, before the NG one came out, the most prolifically used TriStar was this one by Blue Box, one of these mystery meat brands that appeared around 2005. But you can see the nose on this TriStar is definitely inferior. It's too short, it's a bit stumpy and square. It's also got a seam around this wing area, but also the tail is not spectacular. The engine is too high and it's a bit slab-sided as well. So overall, you know, this TriStar, even though it's okay, you know, it's not great, you know, and it certainly looks poor in comparison. And just look at the difference in terms of the exhaust region on these two TriStars. I mean, there's a huge difference in terms of the quality of the shape here, and just the way the exhaust looks. So those Blue Box TriStars are, well, they're quite hard to find anyway. They're produced in low numbers, but they're definitely inferior. Now, the other TriStar I've got here is the current JC Wings Gemini version, which is a modification of the quite good Witty Wings mold, which is a nice TriStar. Now, the problem they've done here is they've replaced the undercarriage with rolling gear, which I don't have a problem with, but it's way too short. Look how short it is. It's just too short by far. And if I compare it to the NG and put them down, you'll see that it's way lower than it should be. It just makes the whole aircraft look wrong. Yeah, and the nose isn't bad, though they've not done a great job on the cockpit windows. And the tail region is pretty good as well. So this otherwise is a decent TriStar, but it really is ruined by that undercarriage. So again, it's not really matching up with the quality which NG are able to produce here. Now, I haven't got a Loch Ness TriStar out and about here to show you, but just accept that it's nowhere near as good as the NG. So, in terms of the mould, this is getting as close to perfection as I think you can get in 400 scale. It's getting a 10 out of 10. So on to the livery, and Cortline had a selection of 4 very colourful schemes, of which the TriStar pair that they had wore 2 of them. G-BAAB wore the yellow version, and BAAB, as is shown here, wore this pink version, which is very 1970s and very pastel-y. And I think that they've done a pretty decent job in terms of getting the colours right here. It's a super difficult set of colours to get right because of the pastels, but if you have a look at the picture here of by Bob Jarrard, then you can see the colours, and if I try and compare those to the aircraft, you can see it's a bit difficult with the light. Let's just move it back into the light, and you can see that the colours here are, you know, they're pretty close together, I think. It's a really difficult pink to get right. It perhaps is maybe slightly too light, but it's really hard to tell, especially on photos where you've got a very limited selection. You can see behind it we've got a JC Wings version of a BAC 111 with the same scheme, and the colour is slightly different. It's slightly perhaps pinker on the BAC 111. Maybe it is slightly better, but it's marginal, I think. Personally, I don't have a dramatic issue there. I think that the other colours are actually probably better on the NG. The darker pink here, and certainly this bottom kind of orangey colour, look closer to the pictures than they do on the Cortline JC Wings version, where they're a bit lighter. Overall, yeah, I think the colours aren't bad. I think, you know, it's a super difficult selection to get right, and in different pictures, the aircraft definitely can look quite different. So, colour-wise, yeah, for me, it's not too bad. I think that I'm going to be giving it maybe knock off a point perhaps for the colours, but it's pretty close. Now, in terms of the rest of the livery, you can generally rely pretty heavily on NG to get components in the right place, and they do on this model. The tail logo, which is beautiful in silver, and the titles, which I always thought were a bit weird putting them on the belly, but also in silver, look really nice. The demarcation of the striping is perfect. It's got the little TriStar titles on the tail. It's got the name of the aircraft under the cockpit here, Halcyon Breeze. and it looks great. One thing that isn't perhaps 100% correct, in fact definitely isn't 100% correct, is the nose cone. Now it's painted black here on the model, and that's correct, but if you look at the actual real aircraft here, you can see that the nose cone should be pushing back to almost at the cockpit windows, and it's not big enough. So I think that NG have got the size of that wrong. It should be larger, it should be more Snoopy-ish, a big black thick nose cone. So I think that is definitely wrong, so I'll knock another point off for that. But otherwise, broadly, I think the model's looking pretty good. In photos, the white striping here actually appears much brighter, but I'm not sure, you know, it is definitely there in the model. It looks okay, perhaps just not quite as bright as it appears in the pictures that I've seen. So overall, I think livery-wise, this model's doing well, but it's losing a couple of points, so I'd give it an 8. So usually in this last section, I'd flip the model up onto the stand and have a look at it, but these NG Tristars look spectacular from underneath, and I wanted to look at the printing and the quality control of the aircraft from the bottom up, really. So it's just wonderful, the quality of the printing. You can see the fine detail. Their Tristars here have this amazing printing quality and fineness at the rear fuselage, which is just a delight to see. It's got a really cool looking bottom anyway, this cool line Tristar with the striping, and it's been captured beautifully. So printing is really, really nice on this model. There are no issues with the print. Everything is beautifully crafted and it's in really good detail and condition. So no problems there. Looking at the aircraft, it's all looking good. Some people have said they should be making inside the engine there darker, but it doesn't really bother me. I think it would perhaps look a bit weird if it was black. Yeah, it looks great. No problems from a print perspective. From a quality control perspective, it's really nicely put together. The aerials are on, the engines all look spectacular, the undercarriage is good, except for that perennial problem with NG Tristars, which is the hubs of the gear. You can see here, looking at this side of the hub, it's just got a dot in the middle and there's no detailing, but if you switch it around to the other side, you might be able to see here that it's got a much better detailed hub. So yeah, I don't know why they can't get this right, but it seems like on pretty much every Tristar they make, only half of the landing gear has the right tyre hubs. And it's the same on the main gear. You can see on the outside, broadly, that the gear hubs are not looking too hot. On the inside, they look spectacular, and they've got this really nice inner detailing. So not really sure what's going on there, but that definitely drops a point, even though it's the sort of detail that you really don't pick up too much. But nonetheless, 1 point off for that, gives a 9 for the printing and the quality control. Okay, up onto the stand for the final part of the review, and I have to say that this pair of Tristars are some of my favourite NG models releases of the year. Love the airline, love the aircraft, love the extra detail of the new engine exhausts. Really, really nice. And I think that NG, you know, continue to excel really at producing models in this scale. They almost always have a really high quality. Anyway, on a score side of things, this model is doing well. It's, you know, creaming it in terms of the actual mold, which is great. A 10, it's done pretty well for the livery with an 8, and I think, you know, it's done well with the quality control for a 9. So it's getting a 27 out of 30 overall, which is a fairly average score for NG models, to be honest. But, you know, this model looks great, and I really, really like having it in the collection. I'm super pleased that NG have produced both the Courtline Tristars, and, you know, I really think that, you know, your collection will be missing something if it doesn't have this model in it. Okay, anyway, thanks very much for watching. As always, please subscribe to the videos if you're enjoying them. Check out my website, Yesterday's Airlines, and, you know, there's loads more good material on there. So thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.